Hello, welcome to Quackalope. Thank you for being here. Today, it's time to do it. Something that I have been putting off for the better part of 2 years because I didn't feel like I'd played enough games. Honestly, that was my first excuse. I wanted to have a repertoire, an understanding of our hobby, and to feel like I could legitimately make a list where I was making hard decisions between what was on it and not on it. Along with that, I thought this would be a cool way to celebrate 30,000 subscribers here on the channel, which is just mind-blowing. I mean, thank you so much for being here, for supporting us, for just being a part of this journey. Now, I do have to acknowledge it is currently 8:41 in the morning, the day that I'm recording this, and that doesn't sound that impressive until I clarify. Last night, we filmed 2 sessions of Kingdom Death, 1 session of Townsfolk Tussle, the top 10 games that aren't on my top 10 list, 2 commercial videos for Spin Master Games, and spent most of the afternoon prepping and preparing to do all that content. So I haven't yet slept, but it's worth it because I'm about to get on the road for a week and a half straight to do some touring, to do some work on the road, and to film some videos in collaboration with some other content creators. And we're going to cross 30,000 subscribers while I'm journeying up and down a few different states. So I wanted this video prepared. I wanted to take the time to share this list with you and not have it be, a couple weeks late. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. The other thing that I should note and acknowledge at the very beginning of this video is there's going to be a secondary video going up today that's going to be driving you back or prompting you back to this video. We are giving away a copy of every single one of my top 10 games of all time. And it doesn't mean that I'm giving away my personal copy, although if push comes to shove, we'll see what has to happen. But we will either give you the money to purchase a copy, have the publisher send you a copy, or I will send you a copy myself. The rules and regulations of this will be down in the description down below. If you're international, the odds are we'll figure out a way to order or give you a gift card to a store in your region so you can get access to a copy of these games. But yeah, all you have to do to enter is leave a comment down below, including your favorite game of all time at the moment and the word Quack. Those 2 things will put you in the running for one of these games. Oh, and I suppose if you have specific requests, feel free to leave those as well. I just thought it would be a really cool way. I thought for my first top 10 list ever released, it'd be neat to have something that gave back to the community. And what does that better than sharing my favorite games of all time with you all? So, that being said, let's get started on this top 10 list. I have a framework. I have a thought process around how this video needed to be done, how my top 10 list was going to be oriented. This is my top 10 list, and I structured it around 2 elements. I wanted to try to make sure that if all I had were 10 games, I'd have my bases covered. I wanted some flexibility, right? I was approaching this list of these are the only games I get, period. What do I need for a game shelf? Or what do I need to get to the game table for a game group? So this ranges in scale, and it does mean that the hierarchy, the order, isn't necessarily my favorite mechanic, like story-driven games. It's not a stack of 10 story-driven games. There's variety here. There's the best games of their genre stacked in the order in which I appreciate them and appreciate or play their genre. So I hope you enjoy this list. A few games didn't make it on here that really should have, but there just wasn't a spot for them. So let's get started. Starting with number 10 on my list is going to be an adorable little solo game coming from an indie publisher out of Australia. This is going to be Ratcatcher. I know, a weird one to have on my list. Ratcatcher is going to be here for 2 very specific reasons. First off, I love the theme, the aesthetic, the art, the illustration, the publisher who created it. I'm a massive fan of this game. This feels like an indie love letter to a hobby that I adore. And if anyone knows me, I needed at least an indie gem on my list. It wouldn't feel appropriate if I didn't have one. And the Ratcatcher is going to be one of those games that shocked me, which is probably one of the reasons why it so compelled me now. It is this solo journey and experience where you're doing your very best as a set of rat catchers with your own skills and abilities to capture cheese, manage the swelling ranks and ravenous rats as they kind of course around the obstacles or around the city streets, and finally face off against one big broodmother or deity rat, an abomination that's been manipulated because of this blue magical cheese that is available. It is mythical. It feels like you're I don't know, the rat controller with the fiddle, just weaving them in and out. And when you get swallowed by a horde of rats, it really does feel like this overwhelming presence of furry, flea-ticked, infested felines, vermin, something like that. Again, it's early in the morning. It really does feel like you just got swallowed by a swelling sea of rats, of churning hair and fur and flesh and teeth. This game's the solo game that's on my list. I don't play solo games as much, and there were some other negotiations here, but I'm going to be honest, if I only had one to play, to share, to table that is easy, accessible, while still presenting and representing a challenge that I love digging into, that has components and an aesthetic that I just honestly can't quite get enough of, the Ratcatcher. The Ratcatcher is number 10 on my list. Moving on. That's the wrong number. Number 9 on my list is going to be one of the newest games to be added to my collection, The Great Wall by Mythic Games, and I put out coverage on this. I was in the middle, right? First impressions, first experience with this game. The base game in itself, I wasn't quite convinced, but as I've played more, specifically spanning into the Black Powder expansion, you start getting the hierarchy of abilities. You start really integrating and understanding how the worker placement ties to the wall development, how your actions and your military might and the custom player powers and factions and abilities and the different ways you can score and grow your ranks. This is this hybrid of tower defense and worker placement with really, really nice victory point scoring and tableau building that I just really am thrilled with. The more I have played this and the more I've integrated the expansions, the more I've fallen in love with this game that Awakened Realms has created. The Great Wall, one that I think I underbid to start with, is now being redeemed by being number 9 on the list now. I think this might be one of those mid to heavyweight games that if I get a group together, I really still want to get this one to the table. In fact, I've been telling Alex and Shira for a little while, hey, what do you think about getting another gameplay of The Great Wall in? It's neat. I don't know that I want to teach a lot of people it. It's got a lot of floating parts, and if you don't have an understanding of Euro and tower defense, it can feel really, really disjointed at times. But once you get a sense of it, once you tie into what this game is doing, I really, really like it. Oh, I'll set that to the side. Grab a bit of a drink, because I've been talking for 8 hours straight. And we're going to swing over to my number 8. My number 8 is going to be Tainted Grail, The Fall of Avalon by, again, Awakened Realms. And I've told people that this is my top 10 for some time. This one has that King Arthur, the Arthurian kind of lore and mythology spreading across this kind of wrecked and ruinous landscape. I love the mythology here. I love the lore, the aesthetic, the production quality. I like this solo adventure and journey you're going on as you do your very best to avoid the overwhelming kind of fog of mist closing in on your terrain tiles. You go through these narrative pathways and branches that are all sort of cryptic and dark, and you explore the stories of Arthur, of King Arthur, and where he went with his merry men. I have not played the expansion content yet. I need to re-get this one to the table. It has been on here for the better part of a year and a half, and honestly, I need to dive in and do more and more coverage of this. Tainted Grail is just one of those games that, for me, the theme, the aesthetic, the lore fit so nicely. It's one of these story games that I'm just incredibly sweet on, and I really do like the combat and puzzle or settlement interaction system as well. As you build and develop your own personal deck, you're going to be sequencing cards one after another, trying to get that perfect straight. And when you take a step back and look at it and pause, for me, it really feels like you can see the actions that you just took, from ricocheting and parrying to stabbing and dashing, or negotiating and swindling, lying and dodging questions. This game is fantastic. It is one of those story games that I have not finished yet, and I'm hoping in the future I'll have the time to do just that. So, 2 Awaken Realms games. They make good games. Super high production, mind-blowing entertainment, incredible stories. What can I say? What am I going to do? Moving up to my number 7. It's going to be a game that I still have in shrink, because I'm going to be honest, I bought a full copy of this when it came back into reprint from GMT Games. This is going to be Space Empires, which is probably a game that you didn't expect to be on here. It is a chit-based space 4X game where you're moving and micromanaging your resources and technology and keeping track on pieces of paper what ships have what upgrades and when they were last docked at port, and opening up the galaxy space and slowly exploring until you shoot mines or drift them somewhere. And everything as you're playing the game is completely hidden until you have this calyptic explosion somewhere in the center as you go for the win. You try to take out your opponent's base or close in on the last few planets that are available. I have everything for Space Empires, and I only have one friend that'll play it with me, and he also has a copy. This game's amazing. One that I've been intending to bring to the channel for a long time. I am very, very, very charmed by this. This is my 4X game, period, and I also understand why it's not right for a lot of people. I like this as a 2-player head-to-head where you're sitting down, listening to music, drinking some drinks, and doing math for 4 hours. This gives me everything I want in a tactical war game with hidden movement and fog of war and a space-themed opera. Space Empires 4X. It's remarkable. It's incredible. It's not Twilight Imperium, but if you want something that's ugly and doesn't apologize for being made of cardboard, but the mechanics are good enough, it can stand on its own, it's really good. My number 6 is going to be a game that was fighting with destinies. A game that I am almost through the campaign of. This is going to be Gloomhaven. And I have Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion here. Gloomhaven the Big Box is not a game that I have been able to table or get into yet. We're hoping to bridge from this one onto the Big Box. But right now, Jaws of the Lion is remarkable. The card play. Simple dungeon crawl, subpar story, but the card play is going to be the thing that shines in this game. You're making a decision between the actions that you have available in your hand as you craft and customize your deck to your player character. You're choosing between high cards and low cards, trying to move faster, but as your turn sequence, you're also running out of actions that you can take. It has a really great pressure mechanic, and one of those games that is dialed so close into the perfect balance that I always feel like I'm right up against the line but can still squeak out a victory just in time. I think it's one of those that maybe encourages you to use all the actions you have to get as far as you can and hopefully win. Gloomhaven it's just remarkable. There's a reason people love it. It is simple and accessible in Jaws of the Lion. It is fun and compelling. The only thing that I really wish is that it had a bit more of a growing, in-depth story. But the puzzle that I have to solve every time I sit down at the table with this makes this one of my favorite 2-player campaign games by far. And it's solidly here at number 6. Setting this off to the side, let's move in to a game that I have played the entire campaign of. I grew up in this hobby, I would say, on this channel playing this game, and I still absolutely adore it. Scythe. Scythe, this fog of war, this resource management and bit of area control game, this love letter to the idea of a Cold War on a board. This is everything that the child growing up wanted Risk to be here on the table. You're going to be creating and harvesting and growing villagers and selecting actions from a set of 4 using asymmetric player powers and abilities as you maximize your influence on the settlement. Scythe is a remarkably wonderful game. Simple in its application with only 4 core actions that you're taking every turn, and sometimes those are limited 1 at a time. This game really does shine. I've played through all of the Rise of Fenris, and even though we had some high and some lower moments, I always wanted to get this back to the table, and I'm always perfectly happy to play anytime someone asks or requests. I understand the criticism that it promises something that it doesn't necessarily deliver on with the idea of this giant tactical combat game, but at the end of the day, when you understand that this is a Cold War love letter in Soviet-era Russia, this game is good. I'll set this off to the side, and we're gonna swing over into a big box game. Into the heaviest Euro I think I have. The heaviest Euro I think I have in my collection. Which is why I'm only using the box lid, because it's both literally and metaphorically the heaviest Euro. This is going to be Anachrony by Mind Clash. This game is so good, and I have just now began to trove the depths of what is in this game. This game is going to be all about time manipulation and control as you use your workers and your mechs to take actions across the board, building out your own resources, generating income and items and resources that you can use to try to save and prevent the end of the world from happening. You have this weird idea of borrowing from the future to prevent or borrowing from the past to prevent the things that are happening in the future. You have a cataclysmic explosion in the center of the game where the game board entirely shifts to this new environment, and the world that you thought you were playing in has changed because of a meteorite striking down on Earth. I think that's what it is. Or maybe it's something else. Either way, I have just now began to delve into this, and I am loving every element of it. This game is beautiful in its production and its application. It has so much going for it, and it's this mind-bending, mind-melting Euro experience that I'm so thrilled. This is the perfect combination of theme, aesthetic, style, production, and really heavy, but yet strangely accessible mechanics. I didn't want to learn this game, but now that I know it, well, I still don't want to teach it to people. Now that I know it, I want to play it so often and so much, to the point where I'm learning the solo rules so I can do more content just on that, and learning the expansions and expanding into everything this box holds. I've only really explored the base game plus, and knowing that there's this much left in store for me to find out about just makes me that much more excited. This game's not leaving my collection, period, no matter what. We're going to figure out a way to get you all a different copy, because I'm sorry, I'm not shipping out mine. I have number 293, and it will not be the one that's arriving to your doorstep. Setting that to the side. Swing into number 3. Number 3 is going to be a big one. Cockroach Poker Royal. And I know, seems like a weird little game for me to add. I'm not a party gamer. I don't typically approach these games, but I gotta be honest, Cockroach Poker is one of those classic hits that I just have not gotten enough of every single game night. It is one of those games that floats over to the table. We sit down either before or after in the middle of a good game, and we just enjoy it. Every age range, every player group, every experience I've had with Cockroach Poker, and specifically the Royal Edition, has been wonderful. It's just charming. It's just fun. It leaves room to talk and to bluff and negotiate with your friends and family. This is my party game of choice, and this is if you don't own any of these games, you buy this one now. Just telling you. It really is that good. Moving down, my number 2 and then my number 1. My number 2 of all time is going to be Blood Rage. Blood Rage is a CMON game, an Eric Lang game. It is a area control-esque game, but ultimately for me, this is going to be a drafting masterpiece. It's a masterclass in how you have escalating powers and abilities. It feels so rewarding when you dig into this. When you're passing cards from player to player to subdraft and cross-draft and do your best to keep other players from going down one strategy or another, you're always making a decision between what you're able to keep, what you have to give up, and what you just cannot afford to let other people have. And there's also some area control going on the board as well, with crazy powers, cool monsters, and a lot of abilities. This is just one of the best games, period. I absolutely have adored even my TTS plays of Blood Rage, and I'm thrilled that I'm able to have it and share it and cover it and play it. This is one of the games that just, if you were going to ask me to think of direct criticisms of it, I can think of reasons why you might not enjoy it, depending on what type of games you enjoy, but criticisms of the game in itself, few and far between. Blood Rage is amazing. And if you haven't had the pleasure of trying it and you like drafting, you like area control, or you like powers and abilities, you need to get this one to the table. Okay. And we're coming to my number one game of all time, which is probably not the game you all are thinking of, because I moved that one to number 0. Anyone that knows this channel knows that my number one game of all time should really be Kingdom Death Monster. But Kingdom Death Monster is always my number one game of all time. On a top 10 list, on a best family game, best game to introduce new players to, best 2-player, best solo, best 6-player, best party game, Kingdom Death wins them all. It is my grail game, my nostalgia game, my perfect game. 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, whatever you need. So it's my number 0. And don't worry, we're giving away a copy of Kingdom Death as well, but it couldn't be my number 1. It didn't feel right. It felt too easy and too biased. I entered the hobby on Kingdom Death, fell in love with this space, started this channel as a love letter to Adam Poots and the work that they're doing at that studio. So, yeah, it's there. It's always going to be there. But my number 1 might shift and change. My number 1 game of all time, right now, is going to be Bus by Splotter. And I know, it feels a little bit weird for me as well, because number 0 felt like it should be held here. It was weird putting something at the front of this list. What do you put in front of Blood Rage? What do you put in front of Cockroach Poker or Anachrony? How do you rank games in a way that makes sense and dare declare that one is the best of them all? Bus is one of the most elegant games I've ever played. It's route building, it's action selection, it has a weird, quirky time machine mechanic, and it's way too accessible for what it does. This game will melt your brain, and it'll do so by offering up about 5 core actions and options you're taking, 1 core strategic principle, and a set of rules that is literally on a little brochure or a pamphlet that you're folding out. It is beautiful. It really is. From the very first time we ever played Bus, I fell in love with what this game does and is trying to do. It is a route building game. You're doing your very best to bring certain meeples to certain locations during certain times of the day. They want to go from their house to work, from work to the bar, from the bar to their house. And you'll be doing so by programming bus routes across the city that allow you to pick up, drop off, and control certain segments of this population. But you also have to decide when your buses go. You have to decide when you build routes. You have to decide how many people you're going to be able to move. You have this whole system where you program and lay your meeples, determining what actions you're going to take, and then you press start. And everyone, one after another, takes the actions in the hierarchy that they determined. Sometimes stealing your workers or meeples, sometimes building routes in areas that you would have liked to go, and sometimes you completely forget that you had to hit vroom in order to take off. Now, that in itself makes this game super compelling. It is really, really a mind-burning game. and I love it for it. But along with that, you pair it up with this magic school bus theme, this weird sort of aesthetic that almost feels nostalgic in the way that it's presented. It makes it feel like I'm playing a game that existed 20, 30, 100 years ago. Like I'm taking something good off the shelf that's just always been there. This game's pretty remarkable. And it doesn't hurt that it mixes in a weird, quirky time rift machine that, if you have to, you can freeze time, screw everyone else's actions over, and make sure the board's prepared for you to take a better turn next time. Bus by Splatter Games right now is my current number one. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts down below. Would you have had some of the same games on your list? Would you rank them in a different order? And how close were you? If you took a guess on that last video, 10 games that are not in my top 10, how close were you to getting my list right? Whatever the case, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. I'll see you next time. Thank you.